If you've ever struggled with fear, doubt, or worry, and wondering what your true purpose was all about, then this podcast is for you. In this show, your host, Sylvia Worsham, will interview elite experts and ordinary people that have created extraordinary lives. So here's your host, Sylvia Worsham.
Welcome to Release Out, Reveal Purpose. Today I have a super special guest, a lady I admire immensely. Her name is Diana Maldonado. She and I were co-authors of Show Your Work, The Bumpy Roads to Success. And that was published and became a bestseller on Amazon last year. So her chapter, I was so enthused with her chapter because she was the first Latina in Williamson County to be elected into the Texas House of Representatives. That's a big deal, guys. You know, that is huge. And I'm a Latina myself, and I'm so proud of her because, you know, she paved the way for other women who are wanting to be in that political space through her journey. And I'm excited, so excited to interview her today. She's got a huge story she wants to share with us on how she climbed through Patagonia and how that helped clear her path. And without further ado, I want to introduce my good friend and fellow collaborator, Diana Maldonado. Thank you for joining us today, Diana.
Thank you, Sylvia, for having me with you today. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And so tell us more about this trip through Patagonia, because I'm really excited to hear more about it.
Yes. So what got me to Patagonia going a little bit back is, having been in politics and coming off of politics, I started hiking, I started running, and during the pandemic, I also did not have a good experience because I was leading an organization and there was a lot of turbulence and kind of looking at like why is this not working? Well, obviously it was a pandemic, but I think it was a disconnect of relationships and people that I really felt were partners and allies. But I think in that time and period, everybody was in survival mode. And so I felt kind of like betrayed, or felt like, just kind of thrown off to the curb, and I had to figure things out. So it was not a good experience. But I also knew that I had to realize to take myself out of that space, because I could do so much better and I could still continue to be impactful, because I started to doubt myself too. Is this the end of the road for me? Like, am I like, the has been. So in that point in time, there was a lot of doubt and a lot of fear and a lot of questioning that happened in my life. And because I was going through, I would do like running and hiking, the opportunity came to do Patagonia. And that was one of the adventures that had been a faraway adventure that I had always dreamed of, but never thought that I could do it. I would just see these documentaries, but always envisioning that, could I do it? Could I do it? And literally, when you're kind of, pushed off to the side or pushed against a corner, I think that's one of those greatest opportunities to really take those risks. And because you don't have anything to lose. And if you do have something to lose, guess what? You gain some perspective on it. So I signed up for this trip to go to Patagonia, and it was during the pandemic. So there was a lot of, steps to get to Patagonia because of travel and all these requirements that it required to get down there. And I think looking back, that was part of maybe like a rite of passage to kind of leave these layers of uncertainty and doubt behind as I was venturing into this new world. Um, and it was simply breathtaking once I got there. And that was just getting there. The journey was still beginning of the hiking. And it was so breathtaking. I got there, didn't know anybody, so obviously we had to become good friends very quickly, and trust and guide and be guided by our guide and travel directors to trust strangers. And so that was very telling, and it was also very vulnerable for me, and also kind of crying to say, I can do better, and I found my stability in this, the beauty of Patagonia, but also the ruggedness of Patagonia. So it was this dichotomy of beauty and ruggedness that I was just, in entrenched in along the way. But then even thirdly, Sylvia, it was also all of this headspace that was going in my mind at the time as well. And I will say in one of those hiking paths that I kept thinking, wow, this is pretty tough. That's where I got the inspiration of the next 10 steps to say, I am going to enjoy this beauty because this is definitely God's grace that He has put on this universe for me to enjoy. And in order for me to do it is not to get ahead of myself, but to look at the next 10 steps. And that's how I started to enjoy that hiking trip for the day, and subsequently the rest of the hiking expedition. And while I came in with a lot of doubt, I also said, I thought I was going to get my answer, but I finally realized, no, I'm not getting my answer. But one thing is for certain is that I'm not coming back to the same. And to me, that was the win.
That's huge. And I'll tell you, as you were talking, my mind was going on how change really is. There's storms, right? That ruggedness that you described, that could be described as like the feelings that sometimes we get when we're going through major change in those life pivotal moments. But on
Yes.
the other hand, you have joy. There are pockets of joy as you're journeying through all these crazy things in life. So as you're talking, I'm envisioning like, how perfect is this perfect example that Diana's sharing with us of how no matter what was happening in her life, she trusted. That's faith, right? You didn't know
Yes.
how it was going to turn out. You just had faith that it was going to turn out, that it was going to give you a lesson, an experience that you could rely on later and say, I did that despite my fear. I did that despite my doubt. I did that scared.
Yes.
And I gained so much from it. I think that's the most amazing thing I gained from your experience. And wouldn't you agree that life is pretty much like that? There are pockets of joy that we
It
miss
is.
sometimes because
It
we're caught
is.
in our doubts.
Yes, yes, because again, I kind of like I was surrounded with this majestic beauty,
Mhm.
but also the turmoil physically and mentally. And so it was part of that acknowledgement that in order, if I'm going to release, that I needed to acknowledge, and I wanted to acknowledge that, people did me wrong. And I also contributed to that as well, and that it was okay, and there was a parting of ways, and I think that's just the trials and tribulations when, you have goal setting or you're focused on one thing and somebody wants another thing, that, that's the discomfort, and maybe also being, thinking idealistically that people are going to agree with you. They don't, and it's okay, but also rising above that and kind of maintaining the relationship or maintaining the perspective on a goal for an organization. So I think in my headspace and physically, it was just what needed to happen and what I wanted to happen, and I allowed myself to go through that journey not knowing what was gonna how it was gonna turn out, but it was trusting God, it was trusting the universe, and trusting this majestic beauty around me. I mean, what a better setting for me to have gone through that period of life of what's that
How
next 10
long?
steps, what's that pivot? And also knowing that it's okay not to have the answers, but just to acknowledge where you are in that time and space.
How long was that trip? Were you there for a long period of time during COVID?
I think it was like a 9 or 10-day trip, but every day, I think we hiked for 6 days, and every hike was very, very different. So yeah, it was like you had to commit to that hike. I mean, you can't go back, you can't say, "Hey, somebody pick me up." you had to commit to that hike. I mean, we went through, just forest and the wilderness and cliffs and hills and the wind. And so we had to be very, very prepared. I mean, we were out in the wilderness, that's for sure.
I find that so intriguing that you went during a time when most people stayed home. Most people
Yeah.
kind of stay. I don't know which month you ventured to Patagonia.
It
Was it
was
in
in
January?
January. It was January of 2022, and it was actually my birthday month too. So that
Okay.
was another layer of, okay, how do I honor, what do I do for myself that I can feel that I can get an incentive to move forward? And it's true, it was during January, which in Patagonia, it's summer, but obviously it was cold here. But I felt that if I'm going to start that year, then I want to start it differently with the unknown and find certainty along the way.
Yeah, and that's what you did, didn't you? I mean, because that was the lesson that you ultimately gained. What was the greatest lesson you gained from that trip?
The greatest lesson it was to release, acknowledge, and really coming back that I was for certain not coming back to the same. And when I made that statement, I came back and I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do, but at the same time, I have everything in front of me to reach out to and to discover and explore and gain from. And I remember, Sylvia, at one of the last trips when I was with my hiking group, and we were sitting down after a long day. And I just told one of my hiker friends, I said, you know what? When I get back, I'm going to write a book, not even knowing. And sure enough, how it all transpired and to have been part of a multi-author book and obviously having met you and other wonderful authors and dynamic women, that it created that opportunity and that level of meeting wonderful women and being in a different level in space.
Because you were in that second book, Going Places, wasn't it too? Or no?
Yeah, I was in both. Show Your Work and Going Places
Because
was in both of those books.
I know
Um,
in Show Your Work, you discussed that running for
for the Texas
the
House, yes.
to
Yeah,
the Texas
Destined to
house.
Run,
And Going
yes.
Places, I'm assuming you used Patagonia as the story.
Well, interestingly, I used Japan because I kind of dedicated it to my son. He lived in Japan for 3 years and Thailand for 2 years, so I titled it as The Rising Sun, kinda like a play on,
I
the
remember that.
Japan
Now I
flag.
remember that story. You're right. You did talk about your because you're a global marathon runner too. You've been to Japan, you've
Yeah,
been
to Paris,
paradise. Where
to
else you've been?
Berlin. Yeah, yeah, different places to go run. But I think that touching part of being a single parent, and here I was traveling to go visit my son who himself, took a risk and uprooted himself and went to Japan, and then at that point in time, the tables were turned because he was my guide, he was my mentor, he was my teacher, and it was about letting go and appreciating those different phases of how life changes us, and just being very proud of his journey and how I could be supportive of his journey as well.
I think that's amazing because as moms, we sometimes never remove ourselves from that role of mothering them and nurturing them, but to actually release that role to him almost like to where he's guiding, he's kind of nurturing your trip abroad, right? And kind of guiding you like, hey, this is how to be. I think that's an interesting shift for
Yes,
mothers to say, okay, I'm letting go of control and I'm giving the control to you, right? I'm surrendering that to you. I think that's and I would think that that would bond you with your grown son in a way that you never dreamed possible. Did you
right,
gain
exactly.
something from surrendering that control to him?
Right, right, because it's like, of course, as a Latina mom, it's like we're in control and, we move all the chess pieces. And at that point in time, it was a learning lesson. And again, one of the things that I like is having that curiosity and discovery of, where the path leads me. And while I hadn't seen my son in so long, and that was my first time to Japan, there was just a lot of new things happening. But it was just the greatest joy when I first saw him and how we just quickly acclimated. We were really good travel partners and we had our little routine. And somebody later told me, one of the greatest gifts is that if your adult children want to hang out with you, it's like they don't want anything from you but to hang out with you, and even more so, travel with you. And
That's
I thought,
better.
that's kinda true, but and I do remember a moment because we were on the bullet train and, I think it was in Osaka, and he had to go back to Hiroshima, and I was obviously had to go back to Tokyo to catch my flight, and I know he had told me, "Mom, we're gonna part ways because I have to go 3 hours in one direction, and I'm gonna put you, go back in the bullet train to Tokyo." And the end of the day came, and it's like, "Okay, mom, it's time." I'm like, I just got very nervous. I felt like that kindergarten child getting on the yellow school bus. I'm like, "I'm gonna get lost, Alex." And he literally had like an index card of step by step. I
Good mom.
really felt
Like,
like that child being put on the school bus, and here it was my son doing it for me. So I felt like our roles were reversed, and it was such a growth process and such a humble way to say it was okay. It was okay.
and I would think liberating too, because I
Yeah.
mean, as moms, we carry a ton of responsibility on our
Yes.
shoulders, and to finally just say, "No, you can be responsible."
Yes.
Here, I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. You get to feel what I felt like raising you.
Yes, the nervousness. Are they gonna be okay? They're gonna get off at the right stop. Are they gonna have a good day at school? And I just felt like, differently about it, like, "Oh, this is what it feels like. Okay, yeah, bring it on." But I think Sylvia, for me, whether it's Patagonia, Japan, and other places, it's the travel really changes me and gives me comfort and perspective and gives me that growth and that curiosity to learn about different cultures and to learn about perspectives and not get so narrow-minded in the way we do our work and the way we're kind to others, and to be patient with people in our lives and not be so hung up on the things that just don't matter.
Exactly. And I think those are very good tips. So, and which leads me to that question of, through all your travels, through all your experiences, whether it be through your experiences in politics, experiences with COVID and how you took
Mhm.
the trips and what you experienced, what are additional wisdom that you can share with the listeners at Released Out Reveal Purpose that will help them have the faith that you've demonstrated through your experiences?
I think one to be kind to yourself and to also acknowledge what is it that you want, and it's okay that you don't know how to start, where to go, what have you, but the fact is just to, like, dream and acknowledge what is it that's your desire, and that's really makes you smile and really makes you kind of, like, start envisioning that. So, I think it's, be kind to yourself and also, like, invest in yourself, bet on yourself. Like, you know what? If the one person is gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. And once you acknowledge that, it's just to take a breather. It's okay. There's no you're not off to the, race horses or anything like that. Take a breather, take your time about how to how to paint that and how to grow that idea. And I would say ask for help. I think that's just so important to ask for help because no person can do it alone. And I mean, there's a reason why there's billions of people in this world, because there's that human connectivity. And, and I know that if I ask for help, there's always somebody, and people want to help. And if you have developed and established relationships, then you will get help like you have never ever imagined. Um, and also celebrate those little wins, because we're obviously going to have setbacks, and sometimes we're just gonna have to do a course correction, but to acknowledge that it was a win, to see it through, whether it worked out or not. So celebrate those wins along the way, ask for help, and bet on yourself and be kind to yourself.
I love the bet on yourself, because I think as women, we don't. We're constantly looking at others, and betting on them, but it takes courage to bet on yourself and to say, I've got this, and I'm going to try this, and I'm going to step in faith, whether I see my path or not, which you did not, clearly, in Patagonia. You had no idea whether, with travel restrictions, if you were even
Oh my
going to
gosh.
get there.
Yes, it was wild, getting from one point to another, to another, to another. There's so many plane trips.
But I see your light, and one of the things I've always admired about it is that you have bet on yourself. You bet that you could be the first Latina to be accepted into the Texas House of Representatives and beat out, what was it, an all-white board? How was that? Tell me a little
Yeah,
bit
I
more.
mean, obviously, and I mean, again, being elected as the first Latina, the first female to the seat, I mean, because he had been, it's a conservative Republican district, and the former, representative had been in office, for, 16 years. And so it was not hard. I mean, it was difficult. It was a very hard, you know, you know, nut to crack, and the odds obviously were against me. But I kept it simple. I kept it close to say, what is my why, and how can I win, and who should I align myself with? And because of that, then the circle started to grow, started to grow. And then before I knew it, it was like beyond my control. Like that synergy was working beyond what I had started. And I think that that's how it happened. And I mean, forever grateful for all the strangers that would open the door at the campaign office and say, we want to help Diana Maldonado win. We believe in changing Williamson County and stuff like that. So they brought their own cause, their own purpose, their own why. And that's how I think that ripple effect just continued to grow, because they saw themselves in that win.
Yes. But you said a very clear word that I want to emphasize, your why, because the why is really critical to get us out of bed every single morning and not stay stuck in circumstances that we deem are impossible. You didn't deem it impossible, and that's why the why propelled you forward. And tell me just a little bit of how you discovered that why, and what is your why today?
Yeah. Part of my why also takes me back where I grew up in Eagle Pass. It was a border town, and there was not a lot of opportunity. I mean, I had a great childhood. It was just lovely growing up in a small town, looking back, but there wasn't opportunity with regards to growth on education, on jobs, what have you. So I knew. And even growing up, I remember raising my hand in the classroom. They wouldn't call on me, and like, I know the answer, I know the answer. So I grew up thinking I want at some point to be a voice, because I have one, and I want to be included in conversations. I want to be able to be like a change maker per se, not knowing that that's what it was, but I wanted to make a difference, and I knew that I was worthy and I counted as someone, in the community, or in my environment. So in running for office, I thought about that, my childhood. I thought about the student. I thought about the parents who can't come to PTA meetings, because
Mhm.
my parents never came. And so that propelled me to be at voice for that underrepresented and unspoken community. And so it's like, I want to change that trajectory, and I want to change that dynamic moving forward. And if it can be done with one person, then others will follow. and it will happen for Latino communities and Black and Brown communities. So I think, fast forward, it is happening. Now, granted, we have a lot of polarization going on, but at the same time, I feel that there's that resilience and there's that hope and that willingness to continue to propel forward. And so to me, the why I continue to impact my why by helping women to elected office, inspiring women to identify, what their lifestyle portfolio is when it comes to culture, to health, and how they and their career, how they can, you know, have those synergies of those three aspects of their life and not just burn out in one aspect and come out empty-handed on the other one. And so those are areas of my why of continue to inspire and impact women, particularly in those areas.
And I think you're the best person for it because you've journeyed through that journey that they're about to embark on. And as having been through those things, and then now using your experiences through what you do hobby wise, like, you're running and all these things play a role in how we guide others through our life and the richness of our experiences and the lessons we learned. Because I think that the 10 steps one was for me very inspiring when you shared it earlier, that if you can get through 10 steps, baby steps, it's like anything in life, right? And you're guiding these women, like you just have to start. It's
Have to start.
starting the journey. And whether you know what is in front of you, because the fear of the unknown is really the biggest fear I discovered when I was interviewing people for my first book about life's pivotal moments. And what more life pivotal moment for a woman to start political office? It can be very fearful for them. And to have someone who has already gone through that journey, guide them through these experiences you've already had, I think is marvelous. And I think that's why you are a light bringer, that you're using your spiritual gifts of guidance to guide women on this journey, because you yourself have propelled forward, whether you knew your path or not. And that's a big reason why most people don't even start any kind
No.
of in life. So I think you're the perfect person to do that. You are now like really stepping into a role that is not held by a lot of women currently. And I think that's amazing that you're carving the way for other women. Thank you for being that Latina to do that. I'm so proud of you. I think it's the best job you're doing out there, because there is a voice. We have a voice. And
Yes.
some of us don't step in that space because we're scared. We're
Yeah,
scared.
we're scared. Yeah, and there's no support, Sylvia. That's what I say, ask for
Yeah.
help. And that's why I'm working on and providing a platform and a conversation and some materials for women, because now in public office and politics and decision making, opportunities, that we need more women to be collaborative and nurturing and problem solving. And, because when women are in appointed or elected office, not only do they thrive, but communities thrive and the economy thrives as well. So I think right now, more than ever, we need to have more women in those positions of authority, and then also to help elect them, but also start with the first, because nobody provided that for me. And I look back, it's like, wow, if I were running for office, or I were, contemplating a leadership role, what would I want to have? And I think if there's one thing that I can impart with women, this next journey that I'm doing to help inspire women into leadership and public office roles. It's so dire, it's so important. And as Latinos, now that we're the majority in Texas and leading in other states, what better time in history is to have more of this surgence of women being in these leadership roles.
I think you're doing a fantastic job, and bravo to you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning and for sharing your story and your experiences and your wealth, your wisdom with the listeners of Released Out Revealed Purpose. I know they're going to gain so many pearls from this interview. And, shout out goes to our, author group from Show
Yes.
Your Work and Going Places. They're a wonderful group of people whose lives have impacted many. So for those who are wanting to get a copy of this book, it's available on Amazon. I know I have it on my webpage, at least for Show Your Work. So if you want to go to sylviaworsham.com and purchase it there, that's great. Diana, do you have any way that people can get a hold of you if they want to touch base with you? If they're a Latina or a woman wanting to go into politics, how can they reach you?
Yes, well, you can reach me through maldonadostrategies.com. I have my website, also through LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. That would probably be the two most easiest ways to learn a little bit more and then reach out to me and then kind of go from there. But I'm excited. I'll be launching my online course offering in the summer. So I'm really excited to bring in and have interest and provide these resources for women in the next few months.
So I'm excited. I'm going to be the first Latina to take a look at it. If I can ever support you, I'm
Yeah.
more than happy to do so, because I think you're a wonderful voice and a light bringer that I'm just so grateful to know.
Thank you, Sylvia. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Released Out, Reveal Purpose. Until next time, keep showing up, keep sharing your spiritual gifts with the world. This world needs you to shine your light very, very brightly. Be the light. Have a wonderful week. Stay safe. Love you all. Bye now.
So that's it for today's episode of Released Out, Reveal Purpose. Head on over to iTunes or wherever you listen and subscribe to the show. One lucky listener every single week who posts a review on iTunes will win a chance in the grand prize drawing to win a $25,000 private VIP day with Sylvia Worsham herself. Be sure to head on over to releasedoutrevealpurposepodcast.com and pick up a free copy of Sylvia's gift and join us on the next episode.